Guests, colleagues, friends, on behalf of Dharma Alliance and the World Council of Churches, it's my privilege to welcome you to today's special conversation on ethics and aesthetics in ancient Greek, Dharmic philosophies, strengthening a shared civilizational understanding of the world. The great epics of humanity, the Rāmāyaṇa, Mahābhārata in the East, and the Iliad and Odyssey in the West, continue to inspire us with narratives that embody universal human values. They remind us that across time and space, civilizations have sought to answer the same questions. Is life, what is truth? What is beauty? And how can human societies live in harmony with one another and the world around us? Today's dialogue explores these shared legacies of thought, poetry, and philosophy, and their relevance in a world that urgently needs wisdom, balance, and compassion. We are honored to have with us two eminent voices, Mr. Arjun Bharadwaj, an accomplished scholar of Sanskrit, comparative literature, and philosophy, whose work bridges Indian and epic traditions, and Greek epic traditions, that is, and Professor Angeliki, Ziaka, leading scholar of religion and interfaith dialogue, whose contributions continue to enrich cross-cultural and interreligious understanding. I'd also like to add to Professor Ziaka's profile here. She's the program executive for interreligious dialogue and cooperation at the World Council of Churches here in Geneva. She's professor of the study of religion at the School of Theology, Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece. She's the author of several books and scholarly articles in her field. She has been a fellow at the Middle East Institute, Columbia University in spring 2017, and at the Leiden University Center for the Study of Islam and Society in the fall of 2015. Together, they will, Mr. Bharadwaj and Professor Ziaka will guide us in reflecting on how ethics and aesthetics, rooted in both Greek and Dharmic traditions, can nurture not only enduring narratives of beauty and meaning, but also principles of coexistence that sustain our shared humanity. With that, let us begin this dialogue of wisdom across civilizations. We warmly welcoming Mr. Bharadwaj and Professor Ziaka.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Very much. Good morning. Dr. Prashant, Mr. Arjun Bharadwaj, it is a great pleasure to welcome you as our distinguished guest, both here in person and online, at the World Council of Churches in Geneva, at the Ecumenical Center, and on behalf of the Interreligious Dialogue and Cooperation Transversal Program. Engagement with India and its many traditions is for us and for all those involved in interreligious and intercultural dialogue a constant invitation and challenge. It's therefore a great joy to have you with us today, and we sincerely thank you for your presence, as well as the Dharma Alliance and the founder of Dharma Alliance, Dr. Prashant Sharma, for co-organizing this webcast. Mr. Arjun, your rich biography tells us that you are an author, researcher, and translator with a deep interest in classical literature, the arts, philosophy, and both ancient and contemporary languages. You also write poetry and compose music for theater and dance, and you have served as a visiting fellow in diverse faculties across India and abroad. Yet, your initial academic training was as an Algerian in the ETH of Zurich. May I invite you to share with us first inspired you to turn your attention toward the comparative aesthetics of classical Greek and Indian literature, fields of language and art that may seem somewhat outdated in today's world, where an engineering degree is often considered more practical and widely recognized, at least in job market. What inspired your shift from engineering to the study of ancient classics, and how did this journey unfold for you?
Right. Okay. First of all, namaste, everyone, to everybody in the audience. Thanks a lot to the Dharma Alliance and the World Council of Churches for putting this event together. The context of today's conversation was beautifully put forth by Dr. Prashant Sharma. It's an honor to interact with you, Professor Angeliki Ziaka. Yeah, so a very good question and an autobiographical question you have posed to me. And so while engineering career would have given some kind of job market opportunities, that's what you said. But then, firstly, I mean, very fundamentally, money is not everything in life, like very fundamentally. So, from my youngest of days, I had interest in literature, languages, arts as a whole. And brought up in a very culturally rich atmosphere in Bangalore in South India, at the level of the family and at the level of home, because of my exposure to literature, music, dance, philosophy at a very young age. So I developed deep interest in one of the most ancient languages of the world, if I may say so, the Sanskrit language. And while I was doing engineering here at the ETH in Zurich, also inspired by one of my professors, one of my mentors, Shatabdani, Dr. R. Ganesh, who lives in India, I took up the study of the Greek language in the University of Zurich in parallel to the pursuit of my engineering. And as I went through it, the similarities between the languages, Sanskrit on one hand, and the ancient Greek on the other hand, that is the Homeric Greek, there is linguistic similarity. There is similarity in approach to life, the way they view nature, the way they view the divinities, their conceptions of divinities, the manner in which they view relationships, etc. Very similar. What the Indian approach and the ancient Greek approach, they looked very similar to me. And because of my background in the Sanskrit language, picking up ancient classical Greek was rather easier, I would say, rather than approaching it through the English or through another language. Through Sanskrit made it easier to kind of learn the language. And of course, with the guidance of professors in the University of Zurich, I was able to read the original, large parts of the original epics of Homer. The Iliad and the Odyssey. And just as the two epics of India, the Rāmāyaṇa and the Mahābhārata, have laid foundations for the very thought of humans in India. See, even today, in India, we have people who are majorly named after characters in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. It shows how it has kind of deeply percolated every aspect of Indian life. Many of our festivals, or many of our rituals, and many of our idiomatic expressions in day-to-day life, they are in one way or the other connected with the two epics. And similarly, what I found was most of the Western tradition, the Western artistic tradition, the Western literary tradition, owes its worth to the ancient epics of Homer. So that interest in language, the interest in literature, that is what made me take up a deeper study there. And that is what eventually, even now, gives me more joy than a career in engineering.
Thank you. Actually, your name, Arjun, is one of the names of the heroes of Mahabharata.
Apparently, yeah.
And Bharat is the name of India in Hindi.
Yeah.
Would you please give us a brief introduction to these great epics of antiquity and what are the common themes that connect the Homeric epics? Mainly the Iliad with Mahabharata and Rāmāyaṇa with Odyssey.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. That's yeah. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, my name, of course, is inspired by the epic, the Mahabharata. My parents were very inspired by the character of Arjuna there, and that is how I got named that way, I believe. And the commonalities, the similarities between the epics, not just Iliad with the Mahabharata and the Odyssey with the Ramayana, between all the four epics, there are too many shared features, etc. See, there is a very interesting saying right at the beginning of the Mahabharata. I'll just quote the Sanskrit original. Yadihasti tadanyatra Yenne hasti natat kvachita. So that is the declaration that the great epic, the Mahabharata, does. It's trying to say that the Mahabharata, the author, of Mahabharata Vyasa, the sage Vyasa, is trying to say that it is a compendium of human values which are not spatio-temporally bound. Although the Mahabharata was written in a particular period of time, in a particular space, that is India, that is Bharata, the kind of ideas which are presented there, they go beyond the geography of its composition, they go beyond the timeline in which it was composed. Similar principles can be seen, similar approach or similar validity or similar relevance can be seen of the Ramayana and, of course, of the Iliad and the Odyssey. There are many, many similar literary features, and just looking at the names of the epics. See, the Odyssey, it's related to the name of the main hero of the epic, that is Odysseus. And the Ramayana is related to the name of the main hero of the epic, which is Rama. The word Ramayana is the journey of Rama, the journey at the physical level, at the emotional level, and in a sense, the spiritual level. Similarly, the Odyssey, like the name itself, today in the English language, the word Odyssey has come to mean a very arduous journey or a challenging journey. The very name of the epic Odyssey kind of indicates the travels of Odysseus back to the person whom he deeply loves, his wife, Penelope, who is in Ithaca. So that's again a journey at the physical level at the outset, but then it's also an emotional journey and also a kind of an introspective journey about what his actual goal in life is. And even when there are too many impediments which are bothering him, both in the case of Odysseus and in the case of Rama, even when we are bothered by external circumstances, how we hold our ground and how we are determined to whatever is good for the individual and the society at large. So, irrespective of the external circumstances, holding on to deeply seated values, that is what we see in both the Ramayana and the Odyssey, for instance. Similarly, if you look at the Iliad and the Mahabharata, both of them, amongst other things, have a war at their center. And both are the names of the epics themselves are indicative of the geography in which they take place. See, while the Ramayana and the Odyssey, the names are linked to the main protagonist, the main hero there. Here, in these, it's about the geography. The Ilias or Troy is where the Iliad takes place, the entire epic, most of the narratives of the epic. And the Mahabharata, like it's in the name suggests, it's the story of the greater Indian subcontinent. And it has its influence over multiple generations of kings, the stories of multiple generations of kings have been narrated there. And here also, although the geography is located at Iliad, it's almost like the whole ancient Greek world is participating in a particular war in the particular place. That's Iliad. That's Ilias. Now, to just draw everyone's attention to one other very important common feature across all the four epics is that at a larger sense, at the global level, it indicates how the decisions made by a person in a seat of power can have cascading effects on an entire civilization, on an entire country, on an entire kingdom. And it's not the influence, the repercussions are not just in times contemporary to him, but it can have lasting effects in the future as well. So it's, in a sense, amongst several other things that the epics speak about, it's trying to very suggestively show how the decisions of a person at the top can have cascading effects. For instance, Paris, one of the Trojan heroes, he elopes with Helen, who was the wife of Menelaus of Sparta. So because of this elopement, he's a prince and he elopes with this queen of another kingdom. And this leads to the loss of several lives on both the sides. A mistake at the top, and there are so many people to suffer. Similarly, in the Mahabharata, we see that Yudhishthira was the oldest of the five brothers, Pandavas, because he has an addiction to one of the vices, say gambling. He gambles away his wealth and kingdom, his brothers, his wife, etc. That has so much of effect on the society. So, amongst several other things, amongst different kinds of human relationships, the responsibility of a person who is in the seat of power. So, that's kind of indicated. Very similar things you can see in the Ramayana and the Odyssey as well. I can go on and on with regards to the similarities of relationships that are seen in all the four epics. Like, go on.
Yes, and please,
Yeah.
could you tell us more about the values,
Yeah.
the common path of relationships, perhaps, and also the responsibilities that the two traditions share, and also why so war and conflict still exist. And can you please give to us some responses for today's?
Sure.
Let's say, if perhaps these great epics can inspire our understanding,
Right.
help our knowledge to understand the path of the world.
Sure. So I think I'll just first take the first part of your question about one of the shared common features in terms of a value of hospitality, for example, to guests. See, in both the cultures, one of the very important themes was that any guest who comes to your place, you must be very welcoming, very hospitable, and both the cultures very vocally say that the divine, that the god walks in the sandals of the guests. It's a very famous statement, Atiti Devo Bhava, in the Indian tradition. And Zeus, he walks in the foot of all the guests. So that is what the both epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey, again and again reiterate. See, for instance, let me take an example from the Ramayana. There are many instances of hospitality to guests, but for people who are aware of the story of the Ramayana, one of the crux of the story is when the female, the heroine of the epic, she's alone while in the forest. Her husband Rama has gone away to hunt for the deer, and she has sent away her brother-in-law Lakshmana to look for her husband Rama, and she's alone in the hut. And she sends away her brother-in-law Lakshmana because she thinks that her husband is in mortal danger. So it was an illusion created by a golden deer. Sita wanted the golden deer, so she sends her husband Rama to fetch the golden deer. Rama shoots an arrow at the golden deer, and while the deer was dying, it calls out for help. And immediately, Sita sends her brother-in-law Lakshmana, who was to guard Sita, so she sends him away as well. She is very angry with him when he first disagrees to go, and finally he also goes. Now this lady who's alone, who's under the impression that her husband is in mortal danger or he's almost dying, even when she is in such a kind of a trauma, a guest comes to her doorstep. That was the villain, in fact, who comes in disguise. She does not know that it's the villain who is eventually going to abduct her. That was Ravana, in fact. So he came in the disguise of a sannyasi. Sannyasi is supposed to be a spiritual seeker. So he came in the disguise of that. And the Sita, the heroine, even when she is in so much of mental trauma, she extends hospitality to this person. So, irrespective of our personal circumstances, being kind to the world. So, that is what we see in the character of Sita, for instance. Here in Odyssey, there are a couple of instances. Odysseus himself, he goes in disguise to different lands. He goes to the land of the Phaeacians kingdom. There he is welcomed with so much of joy and so much of pomp, etc. So they don't even know who he is. But then a person who is a wayward traveler, who has lost his way in sea, it's humanity, it's human to kind of care for him and welcome him and without any suspicion. Why do you want to suspect anybody who comes? He appears to be in trouble. So let us give him some comfort in terms of shelter, food, and clothing. So the king, the Phaeacian king, welcomes Odysseus and gives him a lot of hospitality. Similarly, Odysseus, when he comes back to his own kingdom of Ithaca in the disguise, again, because he can't show his identity there, a swineherd, a person who takes care of pigs, he welcomes this person in disguise. He doesn't even know that it's his own king who is back. Odysseus comes in disguise, and the swineherd who is very poor. He has got only one bowl to eat his food, and he has got only one bed and only one cloak to wear. He offers whatever minimal he has got to this person who is in trouble. So here again, it's showing that goodness, human goodness, is not necessarily a function of the material wealth that we possess. So, goodness is something which should be innate to a person. Whatever circumstances we are in, try to look beyond your own limited self and look at how you can be helpful to a person who is in need or a society which is in need. So both the epics, I mean, all the four epics of both the traditions, in a sense, they kind of encourage selflessness, dissolving of the individual ego, or transcending, looking beyond one's own personal problems for whatever is good or greater good to the society. So this aspect of hospitality, the aspect of generosity, and aspect of that human accommodation. So that's something which is exemplified in epics, I would say. There are many other kinds of relationships, say between a husband and a wife, or parents and children, or between siblings, between the teacher and the student, etc. Multiple different dimensions of relationships. What's interesting is that the epics did not pronounce a judgment that you should be this and you should be that. It just shows that this is how the world functions. And just go through them and see what you think is good for your life and for the greater well being of the society. Now, coming to the second part of your question, with regards to war and conflict and etc. That also I kind of answered in some sense in the first part, I think. War and conflict, that again is kind of rooted in a limited perspective of what is good to me or my society or my country, where the global vision is lost. So that's, for instance, what we see in the Ramayana, for example. So Ravana abducts Sita and he puts all his men under trouble, right? A mistake that he has done. He is very possessive of women, and he wants to have affairs with too many women. And he's the king. He's in the seat of power, a person of power, and everybody under him. It's inevitable for them to obey or listen to his commands, and that leads to the death of so many innocent lives. See here, although it's about the abduction of a woman, the principle of this being very possessive or being very greedy can be extended to anything else. It could be about being possessive about some resources, oil resources or forest resources, or whatever it is. So, this aspect of greed and possessiveness can and being selfish and being limited in perspective of what is mine instead of embracing the entire world as what is common to humanity as a large at large, just limiting our perspective. So this is what would cause conflict and war. I would say. And that is what the epics suggestively tell us.
Thank you, Mr. Bharadwaj, also for sharing the aspect that literary is seen today of men in power, and also the status of women within mainly Odyssey and Rāmāyaṇa. That we could have abundant discussion about it. But for now, I think we can conclude, at least from my part, how, and my last question will be, how can the Indian perspective of truth and beauty in Homer's epics, your last book that was published in 2023 and until now have seen already 3 editions, how this look and this inquiry can inspire people today in the field of interreligious and intercultural communication, and what kinds of intercultural communication would you suggest, perhaps a little bit different from the ones we are familiar with, especially in a dialogue where the mind is engaged, but the body and the action often remain static, distant, and unrevealed? Thank you.
Right. See, firstly, I would say association with any great work of literature which has stood the test of time, association and engaging and reading deeply any work of literature, whether in the original or in the translation, first of all, gives us a kind of joy, transcendental joy, where it gives us a momentary self-forgetfulness. See, for instance, when you're deeply enjoying a poem, or when you are enjoying the beauty of a sculpture, or when you're enjoying the beauty of a dance or a music performance, right? Your own physical or emotional problems temporarily you would have transcended. That would happen even when you're watching a great movie, I would say, right? Temporarily, your own stomach pain or your own stresses, that wouldn't be mattering to you. That wouldn't matter to you as long as you're engaged with a classical work of art. So there is some kind of stress relief which at the forefront will naturally happen by engaging with the classical arts. And a stress free mind can naturally contemplate deeper on values, human values, or values connected with nature, with environment, or with relationships, etc. Because what happens is in our day to day lives, we have so many things going on, and any thought or contemplation will be colored by whatever we are already bothered with. So, to kind of get a very neutral perspective of things without being biased by our own circumstances, etc., it's quite a challenge in our day to day lives. So, engagement with classical art, classical literature, whether it's Homer's epics or the great epics of India, the Rāmāyaṇa and the Mahābhārata, can, if you are very deeply engaging with them, it can take you to levels of tranquility, where it will also give you that mind space to introspect upon your own life and your association with the world and your association with the people around you at the level of the family, the society, etc. So it can potentially make you introspective. And if you read between the lines, like I mentioned in my answers to the previous questions, if you read between the lines, there is the suggestive element of values which the epics naturally reveal. Many different kinds of ethical questions are indirectly answered there, not didactically. It's not saying that this is right or that is wrong, but through situations, it's trying to illustrate what can happen, what can potentially go wrong, and what can potentially go right, etc. So as you think about those values deeper and deeper, and as you imbibe it in your own life, at first it can make you a better human being, and your life can become a little more stress free and a little more tranquil, and you can become a better human in general. And if each one of us becomes a better human and a more selfless human, and isn't that good for world peace or world harmony in general? So refinement should happen at the grassroots level, at the level of the individual, and the multiple individuals, of course, make up a society. And in fact, the epics also have that, can also give us this kind of confidence that let us not get too bothered about the kind of disturbances the world can pose at us. See, in the case of Rama or in the case of Odysseus, for no mistake of theirs, as in visibly, they have not, they have tried to be as best as possible. Even when everything is all right with you, because of your association with the world, there can be problems, right? So it can, the epic heroes, the heroines, etc., can give you the confidence of how you can deal with any of these kinds of circumstances without losing that steadfastness, that stability, and that greater worldview, looking beyond your own self and into a bigger perspective. So that's one thing. And secondly, what I've also tried to explore in this work, when I say the Indian perspective of truth and beauty, is that the Indian tradition, it has got this unbroken lineage, or it has got that unbroken tradition from the time of its inception, thousands of years back, say 10,000 or 15,000 years back, when the Vedas were realized and they were really revealed. It's an eternal tradition, one would say. The kind of theoretical concepts that have been developed in India. See, for example, what we would call the Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. These fundamental features, those features are largely foundational, or any the life of people in any civilization, any culture, can naturally be boiled down to these four fundamental elements: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So that's the aspect of truth that I'm speaking about. How even in the epics of Homer, these values, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, are very evidently seen, although he doesn't.
Dharma is.
Ah. Dharma is okay. Let me start with kama. Yeah. Okay. Kama is desire. All of us have desires, whether to build a house, to have a family, to get educated, or whatever. Every human has a desire. And artha is the material requirements for the fulfillment of a desire. In very simple terms, if I want to build a house, I need to have land, and I need to have the materials, the bricks, or whatever. I need to have the money. So the materials, that is artha. Now, dharma is what ensures that my desire to do something is not in conflict with the rest of the society, rest of the world. Now, because I want to build a house, I can't go and loot a bank or loot another person, right? So ensuring that my desires don't come in the good functioning of the rest of the society. It's the principle which helps you live and let live with the world. So something which encourages harmony. The very word dharma, dharanat dharma ityahuhu, dharmo dharayati prajaha. This is a statement from the Mahabharata, incidentally. So that principle of sustenance of the world, humanity, of nature. So that is loosely encapsulated by the word dharma. So dharma is what ensures that my desire and my accumulation of wealth, that is kama and artha, are hopefully not in conflict with the larger world. And the last one there, which is moksha, which is again kind of special to the Indian tradition, is to look beyond the material aspects of life to have that spiritual vision. So getting liberation, if I may put it again in very loose terms, that is moksha. So here again in the Iliad and the Odyssey, we find these aspects of karma, the karma of Paris, the karma of Agamemnon, the desire to possess, but the desire to possess at the cost of something else, at the cost of greater good, can bring down the kingdoms and bring down life. Yeah. So there, the perspective of what is dharma, what is greater good, is lost for the benefit of the self. So dharma, artha, and kama, and moksha have explored how these values can be found very well embedded in Homer's epics. And when I speak about beauty, those are the principles of aesthetics, such as, that's purely a literary discussion connected with the figures of speech, the different kinds of suggestivity, the different kinds of rasas or impersonal emotions that we come across in the Homer's epics. So, what also I'm trying to show is the universality of the tools provided by the Indian tradition. And even when those tools are not that specifically academically defined in the Greek civilization, but they are intuitively known by any great, intuitively it has been brought in by a poet of that tradition as well. So in some sense, great men think alike around the world. Yeah. Whether they say it explicitly through technical terms or.
And women.
Yeah.
And women.
Okay, men include humans. Great humans think alike. Yeah.
Very much.
Thank you.
I would like to ask our director of health and healing, Dr. Manoush, could you please come next to us? To listen to your reaction, and especially, what do you think? What can we reach levels of tranquility through the knowledge of our ecumenical ancient literature? Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm of Indian origin, of course, from Malaysia, but I was born in a Christian family, and of course, from Kerala. So our ancestors were Christians from the first century, because the Indian subcontinent had all the great religions living. Not only the religions of the subcontinent, but also Zoroastrians and Jews and Islam and Christianity from the very beginning. So it's a context where all the living faiths have been continuously present without So we lived as Christians because the majority of the people not only protected but also patronized us. Now, my own. Though I come from a Christian tradition, my own understanding of the Christian faith is influenced. Of course, when you talk about the Greek philosophy and the Dharmic philosophies, the Greek philosophies have influenced the Semitic faiths a lot. So, of course, especially in the context of the mind and body, the mind. Sorry, the heart and the mind, the nous and the cardia. So in the Sanskrit, it's manas and hridaya. So it's a lot of very great similarities. And what's interesting is, though the Semitic faiths have come separately, originated separately, there also we find a convergence of these concepts of the heart and the mind. And of course, the mind is they're linked and nous. So we will not go into much more. But of course, I follow the Christian faith in an Asian perspective. It's like you choose your God, you choose your master. But I would like to explain one aspect of wisdom I actually have acquired from the Mahabharata. So this is not taught as such, but the idea is in the Dharmic traditions, and of course in the Greek traditions, and all traditions in many ways, our life. It's very important that we are attentive to how we live. So attention is one of the big concepts of and discipline. So in the Dharmic tradition, or especially in the Mahabharata, you have this concept of this chariot. this chariot. And of course, you have also in the Semitic traditions, in the Hebrew Bible, the chariot is very important. That's where Elijah went up to heaven in a chariot of fire. So even in the Jewish cultures, the chariot has huge connotations. But I find that in the Dharmic tradition, the chariot is very, very, very clearly has a great impact, because the chariot is like the body, and you have these five horses, which for a battle chariot you have five horses, and they actually represent the senses, and you know a whole the journey of life is actually making sure that your horses take you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
And this is a great challenge, because our senses are taking over. Usually we land up where the horses want to go, and the problem is five horses would like to go to five places.
Different directions.
So it's a huge struggle. So the question I asked myself is, it's such a big struggle. This willpower. I don't have willpower. How am I supposed to control my senses and take the chariot of my body to the destination I would like to go? And so I think the Bhagavad Gita, there's a conversation with Arjun and Sri Krishna, who's the God incarnate, is very, very it's a lot. Because at the time probably they did not know that he was the God incarnate. But the Pandavas, the five brothers against Kauravas, they chose the king over his army, because the Lord Krishna offered, because he was related to both the warring factions, he offered himself or his army. And the Pandava, of course, of which Arjun is part of, five brothers, opted for the good God. And he had the role as a chariot. So the solution is, who is the chariot? So in your body of life, you have these five senses. You can achieve a very good life with attention if your chariot is God. It's about surrender, it's about submission. And all faiths, point to that you empty yourself and fill yourself with holiness. Islam would say, submission to God. Christianity says about, filling yourself with the Spirit of Christ, the Holy Spirit. So this was a very profound, aspect I realized from the especially the Bhagavad Gita. So what I'm trying to say is it's not written like that, but when you read, and when you are reflecting a lot on your mind and heart, and you realize that there's a lot of leeway for humanity, for yourself, because the mind, the Greeks would, it does it further, it's called the heart, the eye of your mind. So as doctors, we say, if you're learning, I'm a medical doctor, by the way. So when you look at an X-ray, if you don't know what you're seeing, if you don't know what you're seeing, you won't see it. So what we say is that what the mind does not know, the eyes do not see. Because you have to know what the problem, or you have to know about the patient, and you know what you're looking for, then you will see the flaw. But when you reflect a bit further, you realize that what the heart does not feel, the mind does not know. So the heart and the mind are deeply connected to knowledge. So it's your intentions, for you to have a pure intention that will lead you to direct your mind to pursue the knowledge and to live. So what I'm trying to say is this: a few instances of what I've practically learned as a person of Indian origin who has lived, with Hindu families, who have learned about Hinduism and Islam and Buddhism as a practicing Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks a lot.
I think because we have only 15 minutes left, there are questions, online questions. Should we give priority to those that they are online?
Sure.
And after we can have a discussion, and if you wish, we can also.
May I add a comment to what you said? Thanks a lot, Dr. Manoj. Yeah, fantastic. Very good observation. The chariot is, of course, a very important symbol across cultures. And like you said, Arjuna's chariot has the divine as the charioteer to control his horses. So in the Indian tradition, there is also this other perspective that, in fact, the imagery that you said of the 5 horses being the sense organs, that's also from the Kathopanishad. Atmanam ratinam viddhi shariram ratamevatu buddhim tu saratim viddhi manas pragrahamevacha. So the verse goes that way. So the divine can be the charioteer, or your own buddhi can be the charioteer. Buddhim tu saratim viddhi. So buddhi here is the sense of discernment. This or that, when we have that conflict. So the right choices that you make, that itself can align these things together. So of course, the divine can do the job, but then the Indian tradition also emphasizes the fact that instead of shifting the responsibility, you also become responsible by that buddhi, that blossoming of the buddhi in you. And another question that you asked was, that you kind of rhetorically put forth, was about how do I develop this kind of intelligence or this kind of wisdom? So Krishna answers that in the Bhagavad Gita as well. Abhyasena kaunteya vairagyena cha grishyate. It's by constant practice that the honing of the mind, honing of the intellect, and developing wisdom can happen. And this development of wisdom can also happen by engaging with the epics, I think, to bring it back to this context. Yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks for your comments.
So I'll take up the first question, which has been asked online. What main elements can we get from these very important philosophies? And this question goes to all 3 of you, who are the real experts here. The Indian, the Dharmic, and the Greek one, for peace, justice, and reconciliation and social solidarity for all of humanity today. So what are the main elements, or I suppose values? I think you have indicated towards some of them, but perhaps a little bit more emphasis, because I think it does seem that the current situation, global volatility, turmoil, a lot of uncertainty, I think this is a question for a lot of people, for a lot of us. What can we really bring into from some of the learnings from these ancient traditions towards addressing some of these current challenges?
Should I take it off?
Want to hear the voice of Finland?
Right. Okay. I think I have a couple of times emphasized this already during the course of conversation. Firstly, at the level of the individual, not becoming distort with what is happening around. Of course, it's important to get concerned. It's important to be concerned, but our concern should not go to the extent that we get very emotionally indulged, which kind of takes away our decision-making capacity itself. See, in fact, speaking of Bhagavad Gita, that is what happens to Arjuna right at the beginning of the battle. He has kind of put himself together. All the armies have come together for, if we may put it as, Dharmic cause, because the other king who has been ruling there has not been great at all. Duryodhana or his father Dhritarashtra have not been great. But then when you're in that conflicting situation, your emotion itself kind of makes you have a cold feet, or you have butterflies in your stomach and you want to step back, etc. So when you have made a greater decision, a wise decision, not to get driven by these smaller emotions. So not to be disturbed too much, distraught by circumstances, and have that bigger vision always in mind. And time and again, I would say that engaging with the Indian epics, for instance, the Bhagavad Gita, which we made a mention of already, which in a sense is the heart of the Mahabharata, and the rest of the epic can be thought to be a creative commentary on the principles, which are philosophical principles, which are embedded there. going through that itself can bring a lot of clarity about what can help in the bigger harmony of the world and peace in the world.
Would you like to add to that?
Yeah.
Professor Ziaka?
Depends.
So,
I think not only Dharmic philosophies, but also of the Eastern, other Eastern philosophies. I think one great thing is it's not as anthropocentric as some of the other Semitic religions. We are Semitic. We are. It's not that they don't say but the Semitic religions give a lot of focus on human beings as the image of God. So the Dharmic faiths and also the Eastern, religions give a lot of importance to wider interconnectedness with creation. So I think also they give a lot of importance to karma. I mean, to consequences of your actions. And this is very important because we can live by faith, but there are consequences. If we kill or if we hurt people, God may forgive, but you can't raise up the dead. So there are consequences. So these aspects of, I think these are huge contributions from the Darwin perspective, consequences and also interconnectivity between the whole of creation. 40% medically, if you see, I am related as human beings, we have 40% of commonality with a fly. 99% related to the monkeys. So in the sense that if you kill a fly or kill a monkey, is it like almost like killing another human being? So in a way, because we are quite connected, and we don't actually. So we need to look in that perspective.
Very good, excellent point. To add to that, taking forward from there, it's also a sense of gratitude that's encouraged in all of these, because human cannot exist without the environment or without world around. So being grateful not just to other living beings, also for the other inanimate, to the sun, to the waters, to the mountains, to the earth, of course, the trees, the plants, and the animals or animate beings, of course. So that perspective that all of these together make our life helpful and live and let live. The harmony with the nature, and not it's not that human is the can dominate over everything around him. So that sense of gratitude to us, it's called the Runa Prajna in the Indian tradition. That is also there very much in the ancient Greek tradition. If you look at all the rituals, how they worship the thunder, the lightning, or the earth, etc., all of them embodied as divinities. So when you have a divinity associated there, you naturally wouldn't want to exploit it. You wouldn't want to dominate over it. You would want to be treated as a child in the hands of nature. So this, looking at the world itself as being greater than yourself, of course, can help in harmony at a different level. Yeah.
This is, I think we still have a few minutes, so this is a nice pathway into the next question. It says, given both the epics, oops, a new one has come up, so it's freelance just changes to setting. Given that both sets of epics, I suppose, is meant here, emerge from polytheistic frameworks, how might their ethical and human insights be understood within monotheistic contexts, particularly in the West? On this, I mean, I'll just add a small comment.
Sure.
I don't know what the current theological understanding or terminology or research is around even the concepts of polytheism versus monotheism, because I think that's a particular way of expressing expressing differences, which I'm not so sure is necessarily it's commonly understood as very divisive. I would say, I think particularly in Dharmic traditions, this notion of this terminology itself comes from a very different cultural context. So I don't think Dharmic Christians really even have a conception of polytheistic versus monotheistic in that binary sense. Particularly if you look at things like Vedantic philosophy or Advait Vedanta and so on and so forth, then you see that essentially this concept of polytheism is really simply a manifestation, a physical manifestation of the same divinity, which essentially pervades everything. So this binary of the polytheism and monotheism is something, I'm really not a theologian, but so I'm trying my best to explain how I've understood it. But in that context, if we keep that kind of thing, I can see value in that question, that perhaps that's the dominant understanding, particularly in these parts of the world. So what kind of bridges can be made, or how can we explore some of these ideas in this whole context of multiple manifestations of the divine versus a thinking that, a different layered thinking along this idea of monotheism. And in what ways, therefore, can that wisdom transcend this particular and be shared much more widely? I would, I
will be very short. First of all, our discussion was about the ancient epics, and both of them, they were happening in a polytheistic so-called environment. Secondly, our understanding about polytheism and monotheism, if it comes mainly from our religious field, can have different interpretations and understandings. And that's why it's very important to have people coming from the so-called polytheistic milieus that the monotheistic religious people, they think and understand about. So to have your proper understanding of the reality that you are facing, and is not only one reality. And I think the people also, not from these sciences, but also people that they are fascinated from India, is exactly because this diversity existed and is venerated in many ways. And through the avatars, the many, let's say, manifestations of the divine, the many different appreciations, depending also on the level and the societal approach of every person. And that's why we would love to hear your reply. Thank you very much.
My goodness. Thank you, Angeliki, and thank you, Prashantji. Like both of you said, polytheism with respect to the ancient Indian culture or the ancient Greek culture, it's what we are kind of trying to bracket it from today's perspective of the Semitic religions, I would say. So the multiplicity of the divinities there, the divinities themselves are personifications, and they're symbolic of certain other greater natural principles connected with nature or principles connected with the humanity, etc. So they are symbolic. It's not that one is in conflict with the other, one divinity being in conflict with the other or whatever. So let me just give a simple example. Like Prashantji already mentioned, the divinities in India and also in the Greek tradition, loosely put, especially in the Indian tradition, from the perspective of Vedanta, they are concretization of abstract principles. So just give an example, see, when we were children, how were we taught mathematics? What is 2 plus 3? When I was a 5-year-old child, I had to have 2 sticks plus 3 sticks, which gives 5 sticks. The abstract idea of 2 plus 3, I had concretized using 2 sticks and 3 sticks, making it 5 sticks. And probably in Dr. Prashant's school, they taught using stones. 2 stones plus 3 stones makes it 5 stones. So the abstract idea you concretized in a manner which will help you arrive at the answer. Then as I grew up, I could do a little more abstraction. So 2 in the hand, 3 in the mind. So I have semi-abstracted it, and I still have a concrete thing in front of me. After 3, 4, and 5, I was able to do it. Then now if somebody asks me what is 2 plus 3, I neither need sticks, nor stones, nor my fingers. I can say 2 plus 3 is 5, and 200 plus 300 is 500, etc. So the concrete principles of these divinities, whatever is polytheistic, so all of them are essentially leading us to one bigger principle. That is how we understand in India. So just because my school taught using stones, I cannot come and fight with Prashantji using sticks. I can't come and fight with Prashantji saying that only if you use sticks, you'll get the answer. Stones can also be the right path. Sticks can be the right path. Using apples can be the right path. So this plurality, but finally getting unified plurality. That's kind of fundamental to the ancient cultures, the Greek culture and the Indian culture, I would say. So in that sense, it's unity, but the appearance of plurality. And this plurality is again meant to lead us to that unified vision. It's not that all of them are very diverse or conflicting with you.
And this
Yeah.
plurality we desire to understand through the interreligious and intercultural path
Mhm.
and to engage together for the common good.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Presentation. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, please.
Can I, or is there time? Yeah.
I
We
think
have just, oh, yeah. Okay.
Just gone over, but
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, first of all, for the lovely conversation and discussion. I really enjoyed it. So I think you started by saying money is not all that matters. I think I just want to elaborate a little bit more on that to say that, of course, I'm totally agree with it. And I think you need to go beyond economic. I come from an econometrics background. And so I'm really coming from a very practical policy implementation point of view. So definitely one should go beyond economic welfare, and that I think even economic disciplines are starting to realize that. And then when you said, how you kind of bring in these values in modern day life, values that are kind of coming out of Mahabharata, Rāmāyaṇa, and Homer's epics. You said that, of course, one should normally, when you're reading the literature, one comes to a level that, one can kind of internalize these values. So all that I see as a kind of a bottom-up approach in terms of how each individual can in turn start internalizing these values. Now, if you were to think of, as a typical economist, to at the bottom, a top-down approach in terms of saying that, okay, how would you want politicians or economic policymakers to apply these same values to internalize, or having internalized, hopefully at some point. But how would that be translated in terms of, how would you see that being translated in terms of policy decision-making processes, so that we can kind of let go of our selfishness and common global public good, How would you go? What would be the top-down approach for that?
Right. So it's directed to me, or so. Yeah. Well, there are all of us. I think all of us agree that we should be united. I mean, that's basic, and also. Amal is putting consuming extreme consumerism is very dangerous, etc. So those kinds of themes naturally come multiple places in the epics, in all the four epics, which goes against concentration of wealth or power in one hand, etc. So, just to give an example, an instance, there is something called Rajasuya Yaga, which happens. People think that the Yaga is just a fire ritual, but it's something like what the League of Nations or some world institutions do. So, bring together people in a conversation. So, we are not just talking about one country, but of multiple countries, right? Can there be a shared understanding? Can there be some sharing of resources for each good of everyone? So that is what the Rajasuya Yaga is after all about. The fire ritual is only a symbol of developing detachment towards one's own country and expanding what is mineness. See, I usually think that mine is my country only. But then why don't you extend it to your neighbors and to their neighbors, and therefore to the entire world, and therefore also to nature at large? So that kind of perspective of the person at the top having that embracing worldview, that's of course encouraged in the epics. And there are also multiple segments. I mean, for grassroots reality about tax collection or about say sharing of resources, etc. See, for example, to quote from the Mahabharata, a very beautiful instance. It's a guidance given by by Vidura, who is the younger brother and also the minister of Dasharatha, of Dhritarashtra, the younger brother and minister of Dhritarashtra. So he says, how do you collect taxes? Just like a honey bee goes from flower to flower, and whatever the flower can offer, it's not common across whatever, it's not normalized across flowers. So you pick up that amount of nectar from there without harming the flower. Even when the bee sits on the flower, it's not harming or damaging it. So pick up that amount of nectar and make it into honey and give it back to the world. So the taxation principle kind of shown in a very poetic manner. What's the best kind of taxation? Or another imagery given by Vidura, again, is just like the sun extracts water from all water bodies, whether it's salty water or dirty water, etc., and send down pure waters from the sky. It doesn't send down salty waters. Just because you have taken water from a salty pot, you don't send down salty waters. So, I mean, the governance principles, again, are very poetically embedded. So that can be a beautiful discussion in itself. Yeah.
There are several more questions, but I think in the interest of time, I think, should we go on?
We'll have soon another.
Yes, let's have another continuation.
Thank for all those that they are online and for all you that you are in person. And thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you.
Look.